Okay, Krissy, alcoholic. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a privilege to be asked to speak, and it's especially good timing for me today because 17 years ago, I was on the verge of a breakdown, and on December 6th, 2006, but for the grace of God, I was separated from alcohol. And I haven't had a drink or a drug since then. And that's a miracle in and of itself. So I hope that I'll share my experience, strength, and hope with you. My job is to tell you what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And I got to tell you, I have two different sobrieties in recovery. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was beaten down and hopeless and desperate. And I came in willingly because I needed to feel better. So I guess I'll give you a little bit of a background of what I used to be like before I even entered into Alcoholics Anonymous. But I used alcohol as a sedative to stop feeling. For me, it was something that helped me to forget. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. I had a lot of events throughout my life that were traumatic, and I used alcohol and other substances and other behaviors to try to give myself a sense of relief. And I had no idea that alcohol was a problem. I didn't really think about that. It never crossed my mind. For a long time, alcohol did exactly what I wanted it to do. It made me, be able to handle life. The more I think about it, it gave me the ability to face people. It gave me the courage to speak up. It gave me a quiet mind. It gave me all sorts of things. Unfortunately, it was like taking a Tylenol, and I had to keep taking more and more of it. The effect of it was very short-lived, and I continued to need to take more and more and more and more. And when alcohol didn't work, I ended up hospitalized with a panic anxiety attack of magnitude. And the doctor put me on, a sedative to supplement he told me I shouldn't drink while I was using this particular sedative, but I didn't follow those instructions. So I was combining, kind of like the big book says, ultimately we'll start using alcohol and sedatives. That was me. I used to have like a sense of fear and worry 24 hours a day. And I was at a point where I couldn't really go out. I was afraid to be out by myself. I had started to stay home a lot. I was just unable to deal with life. And the irony is that I pretended to the outside world that everything was great. So nobody really knew this. I went to work, I did my job, and I put on a game face, and I could put on the act, and everything was great. And nobody had a clue that I was dying inside. I never really got over some things that, I had been using alcohol to try to treat my malady. I never would have been able to use these words at the time, but my spirit was dying. My spirit was really took a hit, and I lost a lot of the will to live. And I had to find things like relationships would give me sort of a reason to stay alive. I needed to find reasons to stay alive, and I needed to find reasons to to be able to tell myself that I'm supposed to be here and that I'm doing okay. And the things that I used to do to prove that I'm supposed to be here was just, I needed to find the relationship and that special person who was going to tell me how much they love me and how important I am, and if I had that relationship, that would feed me enough to keep me going. And if I ended up without that relationship, it was kind of like I would get so depressed and so empty all over again. And it sounds dramatic, but it was like I would have a withdrawal from relationships too. And I would feel the pain of not being in the relationship, just like what it felt like when I detoxed off of alcohol. And I would get really anxious and panicky. And so, relationships was just another one of those things that I used to try to get the relief I needed. I found that if I kept busy at work, I could give myself relief. The pattern here is I tried to find ways to give myself relief, and all the many ways that I did that. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And usually it involved drinking a lot, and then I would end up doing a lot of things, unspeakable things that I would regret, things that I would feel humiliated about, things that I would be embarrassed about. I was living like a double life, sometimes a triple life, and it was exhausting to try and juggle it all. I would be lying to one set of people and, lying to another set of people. God forbid they all got together in the same room. That would be very, very stressful for me because, I was putting on an act, and my act was different depending on which group of people I was in. I could get along with everybody. I was like a chameleon, and I could fit myself in wherever I needed to fit. And I could fit everywhere, but I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. It was a very nobody would know because I just looked outgoing. I looked like everything was fine, but I wasn't okay. I never could feel okay inside. And so, I turned to alcohol. I remember when I first drank when I was in my early teens or something, and it was like that was it. It was amazing. I felt like and it was just I knew it was for me. And there's red flags along the way. I wouldn't have known at the time were red flags, but I was drinking alcoholically by the time I finished like 8th grade. My parents made homemade wine. I would take a bottle of wine from the basement, and kids would go down to the local pond, and I would sneak that bottle of wine down there, but I hid it because I didn't want to share it. I wasn't down there to socialize and party with these kids so that, it'd be cool and look like I have this drink. I wanted that all to myself. I was very concerned that I would run out of alcohol. And that was the story of my life. Like I was always had to make sure there was plenty left, if I went such a drink hog, it's gross, it was gross when I think about it. And, as I got older, I would put myself in dangerous situations, and I would end up in cars with people I should never have been with. I mean, it's a miracle I'm still alive when I think about like the places I put myself in and the people I don't even know that I was with. And I would party with anybody if they would give me a drink or whatever else. And so it's like I traded myself for, like I would literally go anywhere and do anything if somebody was waving a bottle of vodka and a bottle of Absolute or whatever in front of me. It was like, Hansel and Gretel with like the candy, hey, come on, I'd be like, okay. And so, that led to a lot of like the big book says, pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization stuff. That was true for me. Some people knew about it, and I hid it well from a lot of people, so again, these are things that I knew about myself, and I did a good job of hiding. I really did hide it well. So, by the time I was graduating from high school, actually, I wasn't even, I was like 16. A next door neighbor asked me if I wanted to come down and work at the local restaurant as a hostess. And I said, sure. So I went and I wasn't even 16 yet. And I left at the end of the night with cash in my hand. And they gave me a free drink at the end of the night. I was like, this is it. I was like, I'm home. And, I ended up working there, and I got addicted to that life. And I worked for the restaurant business for 20 plus years. I didn't want to go to college. I just wanted to work there, and I loved my party life. It was normal. Everybody did like the same things as I did. I got to drink every day. I got to drink at work, during work, after work. Nobody cared if we drank before work. I mean, it was just a lifestyle. And so at a certain point, I started to feel like I gotta do something with my life, like, and I decided, first off, I ended up, I got engaged and I got married, and I bought a house, and I started doing all the things. I had a checklist, of all the stuff that, I could be doing that would prove that I've got my life together. I can say, yep, I'm doing good. I'm okay. So, engaged, yes. Buy a house, yes. Get married, yes. Have a baby, yes. All of the above. Doing great. Life is wonderful. When my son was less than a year old, I was already calling a lawyer asking how much it would cost to get divorced. I was miserable, and I stayed in an unhappy marriage for a long time because it was too expensive to get. It was just too expensive to get divorced. That's how my life was. So instead of getting divorced and spending the money, I lived another separate life that, is infidelity and just exhausting and in and of itself. And, then at a certain point, I needed more, and, my life wasn't enough. And I decided I was going to go to college. That'll make me be something. I'll be somebody if I go to college, I was very active. I was a physical fitness instructor. I was, working in the restaurant. I had reached the ultimate sort of manager level, and I was like, still not good enough, and I knew I'd either have to buy my own restaurant or go find a different job or something. And I didn't want to be in the restaurant business. So I was like, all right, well, I like exercise, so I'll go to school and be a physical therapist. That's what I'll do. Because I'll get a degree and I'll be somebody, I can be a respectable person. And, I was like trying to do these things to prove that I'm, I am a somebody, and that I'm respectable. I didn't feel that way at all about myself, but I was trying to prove it to myself and the world. So I went to college, and I was in a doctorate degree program for physical therapy in my early 30s. And I got 4 credits shy of that doctorate degree. And I hated it, by the way. I knew in the first year I was miserable in that. I didn't like it. I didn't want to keep going, but I had already committed, and I knew I didn't want to be a failure. I didn't want to fail anything. I'm too stubborn. So I kept going. And my drinking and, sedatives, just everything just kind of amplified over time. It just kept getting worse and worse. In the last year and a half of school, I started to get unexplainable muscle weakness, and it was something that I thought was just, I was living a sedentary life, going to school. I wasn't doing all the exercise and stuff, so I kind of ignored it for a while. But I came to realize that it was really something very serious. And then I was under the stress of trying to figure out what was wrong. And my way of handling stress was to take more of those things that, substances and alcohol that were going to help me. Well, I never realized it, like these little red flags along the way. But like, I remember one morning I had to take my son to a football camp, and he's this little peanut, he's like 11 or 12 or something. And his cousin was like 15, like a giant. And I thought, oh my God, my kid is going to be in a place full of all of these giant and he's gonna get killed. I know he is. But anyways, I take him to register for the camp, and it's 7-ish in the morning. I had to get up really early. I didn't take the morning sort of, treatment plan as normally I would. And so I was detoxing, withdrawing, and I didn't know it. And when I had to fill out some paperwork, I'm not kidding you, my hand was like, like I couldn't write. And I was like, what is that? I had no idea what was happening. But you know what I told myself? I told myself this story. You're just really pumped up and your adrenaline is pumping because, you're like stressed out. You're like thinking about your kid and all that stuff. So I told myself, this is what I used to do all the time. I used to tell myself stuff like that. Like when I was in school, I would have to hurry home from school to jump right into work at the restaurant. And I wouldn't have had a drink for like a significant period of time. But when I got to work, I would have to carry a martini glass and I'd be like, this, and so I would literally ask the hostess to carry the drink for me when it was a martini or something, because I couldn't carry it without spilling half of it. And I would say to my, and the first thing I'd do when I get to work, and this is why I loved my job, was we would have our little office business meeting. The wait staff would have a little business meeting. The bartender would make like a big giant thing of whatever cocktail, and everybody would go out back, take a big shot of something, and I would just go, and then I could carry everything perfectly fine. No more shakes, right? But I told myself that I was just all jazzed up because I had to jump into a busy thing. So again, I told myself it was like the adrenaline stuff, and I just thought it was a transition from, just racing to get to work and then jumping into a busy night. So I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know I was already so chemically dependent on the things that I was drinking and the pills I was taking, that my body was that was a symptom of my withdrawals. My body already was craving more. So I had the physical, the hopelessness of body already happening. We talk about how we get recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body in the big book. And my mind and body, I couldn't imagine living without alcohol. Well, and I think maybe a couple of times people suggested like I take a break or something, and my brain literally was like, why would I do that? I had no idea why stopping drinking, like that just didn't make sense to me. It never crossed my mind to stop drinking. Not until the day I was put in the hospital. Not until that day, which was 17 years ago tomorrow. So I don't know, like it was just a normal life. And another line in the big book says, we can't differentiate the true from the false, and I thought I was handling life, and I wasn't. I was burying myself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and I was just like digging a hole, and I was getting more and more closer to death. Hopelessness was getting like greater and greater, by the day. One day I woke up and my son was in I forget what grade he was. He was 12, and he had to get up and be out the door by 7:46 a.m. on the dot. He was a very structured kid. He knew exactly how late he could leave and get away with it. And I was literally waiting for him, like anxiously, to catch the bus so that I could, get that first glass of, coffee mug full of Pinot Grigio. That was my morning routine. I would have my coffee mug with Pinot Grigio, and my son would be walking out the front door, and I'd be in the, I'd wave, but then I'd be in the kitchen watching to make sure he got, and I would see the bus coming, and I would make sure he caught the bus as I'm like, pouring my coffee mug of Pinot Grigio. And God forbid he missed the bus. I was like, that would be just like I would lose my, you know what, because that really interferes with my need to start drinking. And one of my rules I had, another red flag, by the way, if I have like lines and I know I'm not an alcoholic, I don't have a problem because I'll never drink with my kid in the car. Well, my son didn't get to go very many places. At least I didn't drive him very many places because I was responsible for driving him, but I was drinking, so I couldn't. So he always had to find somebody who would come and pick him up, or he would have to have friends that came over. But I was not capable of, I wasn't a responsible mother, that's for sure. So that's the sort of thing, like there's effects that my alcohol consumption had that I couldn't really see at the time. And so anyways, I had that one morning, I woke up after doing that same thing over and over again. And, every day it was kind of the same. I would have to have that drink just to kind of get going in the day. And I would then have like maybe an hour of, one or two of those, and I would start to feel leveled off and okay, and that would take me into about 9 in the morning, 9:30. I would make all of my calls and talk to everybody while I was in my comfortably sort of not drunk, but okay feeling. And I was still in my happy, like I had a window of like happy space, there was this window of time, and I would tell everybody, yep, everything's great. I would make sure everybody knew how wonderful everything is. Life is great, blah, blah, blah. I would handle everything. But that window of time that I had to do that just kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And one morning I couldn't find it at all. I was like, oh my God. And I heard a voice. Now I know now in retrospect, like this was the grace of God. This was truth coming to me. And what I heard was these words: Krissy, there's not enough booze or Valium in the world to make you feel okay. And I knew it was true. I was like, oh my God. And it was like a devastating, crushing blow. I was like, I didn't even know what to do at that point. But here's the interesting thing. One of the women that I worked with at the restaurant, who happened to be a little bit wilder and crazier than me, crazy, like wild. And she had gotten sober 6 months prior. And I used to feel so bad for her. I would be like, oh my God, you poor thing, that must suck. I felt so bad for her that she had to be sober, but she talked about it. She was going to those meetings and stuff. So like when I had that meltdown that morning, when I couldn't find the happy space anymore and I couldn't feel okay, not even for a second, I reached out to her and I just said, I need help. And she said, don't move. I'll be right there. Do not move. And I was like, okay, and she came and she got me. I mean, she was there in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it was. I was desperate and I was willing, and I just went where she took me. First we went to the psychiatrist's office because I had a psychologist. I was in therapy for years. Therapy up the yin yang. I never talked about my alcohol consumption. I was in therapy, but it's not like that did me any good. I wasn't getting honest about my drinking. So I ended up in the hospital, and I was in a locked unit voluntarily. I admitted myself in, and one of the things they suggested to me while I was in there was that I might want to stop drinking. And I was like, well, is that going to help? And they said, yes, that's going to help. And I was like, okay. So they detoxed me off of alcohol and off of the Valium that I had been on for like 8 years. I was highly addicted to that. I didn't know that you're not actually supposed to be on that medication for such a long period of time. I just had a doctor who kept prescribing and prescribing and prescribing. And, it was a doctor prescribed medication. So I don't really think about it as I was addicted to it or anything. It didn't cross my mind. But I got to tell you, like, detoxing off of that was probably the hardest thing. It was brutal. But this is Alcoholics Anonymous, so I'll stick with the alcohol. So they put me in a outpatient addictions rehabilitation program, and I did everything they told me to do. I mean, I was willing. I did everything that they told me to do. I went. The guy was funny. He's like, "We're gonna go into the meeting, and I want you all," because there was a group of us, like getting on the little, fun bus together, the Bozo bus, going to an AA meeting, and he said, "We're gonna sit at the table. It's gonna be like a table, kind of in a big rectangle. Sit at the table, and they're gonna ask you to introduce yourself by first name. Introduce yourself as an alcoholic. Raise your hand. Say you're new. When they offer tips, take the tip. Get a 24-hour coin. Ask for help." I was like, okay, I just whatever. So I'm in the meeting, and I raise my hand. "I'm Krissy. I'm an alcoholic. I'm supposed to ask for help. I don't even know what I need, but I'm just doing what they told me to do." So, a couple women came up to me after the meeting, and they offered to, one of them, they were setting me up with a woman to be my sponsor. And that woman was like, "I'm going to call you every day at 9 a.m. Is that okay?" And I was like, "What? That's weird." That was like crazy to me. That's insane. What are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you want from me? I'm like, no. I just was like, it was weird. And but I said yes. I was like yes to everything, because I was desperate. So she called me every day, and I got to meetings every day. I did what I was told: go to meetings, get to a meeting every day. I had the sponsor used to say stuff to me like, "If you just get to the end of the night, put your head on the pillow, and you haven't had a drink today, you're a success. You've had a good day. You're a success." And I needed to hear that. I heard people talking about God, and I just was like very, very, like, I have had religion PTSD. I gotta tell you, I was like, you talk God stuff to me, I was like, no, get out of my face. I was one of those people they describe in the big book that was very, what's the word? I can't even remember the word now. But I would bristle with antagonism at anything religious, God oriented. So therein lied a problem for me. Like, I went to the meetings and I didn't drink, but I never got the treatment plan for my alcoholism. So I stayed sober, kind of like sheer, like, white knuckling it and determination, and using meetings and people. And I had a sober boyfriend, and he was like, I forget, like maybe 17 years sober when I got sober, and he was my higher power. I trusted him. I knew that if I was with him, I wouldn't drink. He wouldn't let me drink. As long as I stayed with him, I'd be okay. I had a him, and he was my higher power. Except, unfortunately, it's a human aid, and we would be broken up together. It's like alcoholic relationships, alky love, I've heard it called. And it wasn't reliable. And every time we broke up, I wanted to kill myself. Every time we broke up, I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I wasn't okay. Again, here I am, not okay, sober. But I did, so I did manage to not drink, and I went on my own way. I did Krissy's way. I don't recommend this plan, by the way. I don't recommend this recovery program, but mine was, I'm going to go take a lot of spiritual classes, retreats. I read a lot of self-help books. I did like everything I could to learn about spirituality, and I'd do anything that had nothing to do with God. And that was just the way it was going to be for me. I was very stubborn about that stuff. So I, the stories that we tell in AA are supposed to be about how we develop or establish a relationship with God. I got to tell you, I didn't start to do that until I was 14 and a half years sober. It's a miracle that I stayed alive and that I didn't drink. quite frankly. And I suffered a lot of misery, a lot of depression, a lot of bedevilment on page 52, sober. I didn't have my coping strategies. All I had was the unmanageability of my life because I had untreated alcoholism. You know, putting down the drink is the first part, but getting recovered requires the program. It requires the process. I just read it with a sponsee yesterday. You know, part of my program is that I read the big book with people. And what we read yesterday was about there's a solution. And it says almost none of us, page 25, almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, and the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it worked in others, you know, and we've come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. Well, that happened to me finally at 14 and a half years sober. I came to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life the way I'd been living it sober. Okay. And I had like my next meltdown. It wasn't because I was drinking. It was just because I had another failed relationship. Life wasn't working out. I thought I was so much better by now. You know, I really thought I had stayed out of relationships for over a year, almost 2 years without a relationship. I proved to myself that I could do it. I was all better. And then I went in, and as soon as I was in a relationship with another person, every single one of my character defects, all of my fear, doubt, insecurity, everything came right back. It's like a big flood. And I was like, wow. So I ended up during COVID with having had a failed relationship. I got introduced to a lot more new meetings. I was introduced to a lot of meetings on Zoom because we couldn't go to in-person meetings at the time. And I have to tell you, thank God for the meetings I went to. And the meetings I went to did not promote reading the big book and working the steps and the process of, you know, like doing the self-sacrifice, enlarging and perfecting our spiritual life through self-sacrifice and work with others. Like what the meetings I went to, I would say were more about, this is what they used to say, come to the meeting, share about your problem, just dump it in the middle of the room, and you'll hash your problem. It was kind of like that mentality. Just dump it in the room and don't take it home with you. So I would dump my problems all the time, but I never got recovered so that I stopped having problems. You know, I kept living and creating more problems, and I never got treated for my malady. You know, my spirit needed healing, and there was only one way for that to happen, and I refused it for a really long time. You know, it says there's one who has all power, that one is God, may you find him now. And that the whole purpose of this book is, you know, because we lack power, the power to live. And so that's what this book is all about. It enables us to find a power by which we can live. Of course, that means we're going to talk about God. And I wasn't willing until my next meltdown to talk about God. You know, and when I finally got beaten into submission sober, I accepted this new idea, you know, and that I needed and wanted God. It was like something happened. I was listening to these meetings. They were people that were like recovered and like seriously like bright lights, starry eyes, you know, like light beams coming out. They were like, okay. I'm like, what do they have? How are they doing this? You know, because that's not what I saw at the meetings I went to in person. You know, it's not the ones that I went to. And there was this one woman, she used to just be so enthusiastic, and she would talk about God, this, God, that. And, oh man, I used to get so annoyed. She would just irritate the crap out of me because I just didn't want to hear that word. You know, I would still like, but you know what happened? Another voice came to me. I heard a voice. You know what it said to me? You need to call her. You have to ask her to take you through the steps. Okay, I'm 14 and a half years in AA without a drink, and I haven't completed the steps yet. I don't recommend this plan. Okay. Don't wait. Read the book, find a sponsor, go through the process. You will find freedom a lot faster if you give up the judgments about this God thing, the God thing. I wasn't willing to let go of my contempt prior to investigation about the whole God thing. You can call it higher power, you can call it anything you want, but I was still in a fight with a word, and the fight with a word kept me from the entire program for far too long. And so when I finally gave up the fight, I heard a man in the meeting, and he said something that literally floored me. He said, "Don't box with God, your arms are too short." And I was like, oh my God, I was in a fight with God. I was in a fight with God. I was in a fight with D-O-D, the 3-letter word. I was fighting that thing for my whole life. I hated that thing. I didn't want anything to do with it. Get away from me. Stay away from me. You know what? I stopped fighting. I surrendered. That was it. I'm done. You tell me what I got to do. I was right back to beaten to a state of willingness. I read that book hungry for it. I needed and wanted it. And I had to say the set aside prayer every day when I was reading the book with my sponsor. God, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so I can have an open mind and a new experience with all of these things. Please, God, help me to see the truth. And you know what? The line that stuck out to me was, so I can have a new experience with all of these things. And I really wanted a new experience with my life, with my relationship with others, and with my recovery, and obviously with God. I grew into wanting a relationship with God. First, I gave up fighting with God. That was part of how my relationship started to, I had a reconciliation. I had to stop being mad at God and be willing to invite God to come into my life. And so these steps, where step 1 says my life is unmanageable. It says I'm powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable. I literally have to admit, my life is unmanageable. I need a power greater than myself. I didn't get to step 2 for a long time. But step 2 came to believe that there's a power greater than myself that can restore me to sanity. That happened, June 24th, 2021. That was the day that I gave up my fight, and I said, oh, I get it. I have to be restored to sanity, and God's got to be part of this deal. Okay, got it. And then I did, okay, I'm offering myself to God. 3rd step, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. I so desperately wanted relief. Take away, so I can do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. And, I get it. God restored me to, be usable in step 2. And then in step 3, I'm asking God to use me. He's going to build with me and do with me. I'm like the tool God's using to build and to use. And I used to think that step 3 was about God building me, but he's actually building with me, and he's doing with me. I know that I can bear witness to others of his power, of his love, and of his way of life. So that's what I'm doing these days. I'm bearing witness to you all and anybody I can, because I have been restored to sanity. Sanity is soundness of mind, body, spirit. It's being returned to wholeness. It's healthy. It's founded in truth. I mean, there's all of this sanity stuff that, it enables me to be useful to people, to care about others, to have the desire to help other people and contribute to life, instead of what can I take times 1,000, take like my whole life was all the What's in it for me? How is it going to benefit me? Do I get something out of it? How am I going to get what I want? What about me stuff? And these days it's like, I trust. If I sacrifice me, I get so much more. God literally like fills me up and puts people in my path, finds a way, makes it easy, enables me. It's just, everything's the opposite of what my mind wants to believe. My mind wants to believe I don't need God and I got this. And I don't got this and I need God. I went through the 4th step and the 5th step, and I realized all the things that were kind of detouring me away from God, all the stuff that defects me away from God. They're all defecting me away from God. I like to think of my character defecting from God. That's the character defect, defecting from God. And once I returned back to God, and I asked God to, take all of me, the good and the bad, and to remove all of my shortcomings, so that I can do God's bidding. I mean, it all goes back to how am I going to, God, give me the strength to do your bidding. So I've asked God to remove from me the things that stand in the way. And, that's the 7th step. The 8th step, by the time I'm at the 8th step, I'm ready and willing, and I actually have the desire to make right those things. My heart is like, I want to love. I want, there's a spirit of forgiveness. I'm humble. I know all of the wrongs I've done, and I don't want people to, I don't want people to live with the harms I did. I want to give them the best possible chance to heal from it all. Because I know how good it feels to me when somebody actually admits they've harmed me. I mean, I have to be able to grow whether they do or they don't, but it certainly is a gift when we do admit our wrongs. It helps in the process. And step 10 is just a repeat of all of the steps. I'm in a constant state of keeping check on myself. Am I getting selfish, or am I thinking about what I can put into life? Am I being kind? Am I being patient and tolerant? Am I doing all of the, thinking about the welfare of others, and what I can contribute to life? And step, how am I doing things so that I stay in conscious contact? And it's about improving, and it doesn't stop. Improving my conscious contact with God. How can I improve that? God's never not with me. I know that for a fact because God's everywhere. God's always, all the time, everywhere, omnipotent, omnipresent, whatever. But like, I wasn't aware of it. I was unconscious. I was asleep. I wasn't paying attention. I was unaware of that presence. And these days I'm looking for God. I think of it as benevolence and the goodness in people. I think of it as, joy and love and kindness and truth and all of those fruits of the Spirit. And I look for that. And I try to be a representative. That's my job, an agent for God, a representative, if you want to call it. I work for God. And I'm here to play the role He's putting me in, and I've accepted that humbly. My humility allows me to accept my position, and so that's, I stay in a lot of prayer, and I seek God in my own ways also. And step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, thank you, God. I feel like I did wake up, something, the lights are on, whoa. And I'm going to carry this message to other alcoholics, and I'm going to try. They take it, they don't take it, whatever they do, it's out of my control, but I'm responsible to deliver the message and practice the principles that we learn in all of the 164 pages. It's like we're learning all these great principles to have faith and trust and harmony and unity and love and tolerance and all these things. I got to live that way everywhere I go. I can't pick and choose. I can't just do it here in the meeting. I got to take it to my family members, even on Thanksgiving. I got to do it, everywhere. And this way of life is incredible. And I'm far from perfect, but I keep growing. And, every experience these days, God helps me work things out for good, even if they don't feel good in the moment. And I know that. I trust God. My favorite mantra these days is, I trust you, God, because the mind wants to say blah, 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 blah. And then I actually have to say, nope, I don't believe the mind. I've come to believe the truth. I've come to believe whatever the word is that is true. So that's my experience with the steps. And it's the greatest joy to work with others. It really does grow me. And I get to watch as people wake up and they start to have their life like restored. This is like a front row seat to the best show in town. You know, it's incredible. So thank you so much for letting me share. It's been an honor to be here with you all. Thank you.